Disclaimer: a review code was provided by the publisher. I'm always immediately intrigued when a well-known studio like Game Freak takes a step back from continually developing games for the most profitable media franchise in the world, Pokémon, and instead puts some of its resources into creating something fresh and new. In recent years, titles like Harmo Knight, Pocket Card Jockey, Timbo the Demonetized Elephant, and Giga Wrecker Alt have ranged from surprisingly great to at least interesting. Continuing that trend is their newest title, Little Town Hero, which released today exclusively for the Nintendo Switch for about $25. It's a simple game with simple charms, with an immensely promising battle system let down by its reliance on pure luck that, unfortunately, can bring the entire experience down. As far as the setup goes, you play a kind, fiery boy named Axe who lives in a little town. With an absentee father and growing up with no resident ever being allowed to leave their town, for fear of the outside world, he's incredibly motivated to see what's out there with his own eyes. It's sort of analogous to Pokemon, particularly with Axe's rival having green hair to complement Axe's red, alongside other little characters and happenings that I couldn't help but draw comparisons with. No character in Little Town Hero is really all too memorable, which I found to be a shame, as I found a lot of their designs to be charming. They all fall into typical charming archetypes though, so at the least I didn't find any of them to be bad. This is a cozy game with a pleasant, sleepy vibe that feels nice to be in so long as you're taking everything at face value. My time with the story so far hasn't followed up on Axe's motivation to leave the village, however, as it mostly seems to be a way to establish that he's ready to do whatever it takes to be allowed to leave, even if it means fighting the monsters that have suddenly appeared in the village, which kind of sums up my 8 hours so far with Little Town Hero. Narrative beats often get brought up, and then distracted from as the core cast fumbles about doing small errands and trying to solve questions in odd ways. Again, it has its charms, but most of it is surface level, best not to be looked into or thought about, as it'll just help you realize how bare most of it is. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing here is bad, after all. I just wish I cared more about it due to having strong main character designs in such an effectively endearing location. I felt the same about the game's soundtrack too. Toby Fox's involvement has probably been the most clearly communicated aspect of this game, and while you can absolutely tell it is his work, the soundscape is quite in line with a traditional JRPG. It's good stuff and matches the tone of the game quite well, but it's definitely a bit more subdued than I was expecting coming off of Undertale and Deltarune. Speaking of things that haven't been communicated well, however, let's finally touch on this game's core draw, the battle system. This is probably partly on me for not paying much attention before release. I was sold on trying the game solely due to the developer's pedigree after all, but I just thought this game was a traditional JRPG with a stylish battle menu, and that is absolutely not the case here. I was very surprised to find out that this game functions similarly to an odd cross between a board game and a deck building game. Now, explaining all of this will sound confusing, but rest assured that the game layers in its mechanics gradually, and the way it functions makes a great deal of sense when the controller is in your hands. But essentially, you have a deck of moves that get randomly doled out to you. Each turn, you're given a select amount of energy points corresponding to the numbers on each of these moves. By using those energy points, you can activate the card and use it. Red cards are focused on attacking your opponent, yellow cards are defensive to keep the enemy from attacking your health, and blue cards are support focused, either buffing your character or debuffing your opponent. Every few turns as the meter on the bottom fills up, you work toward having more energy points at your disposal, up to a total of 6. Your aim is to try to defend your heart points in a guts number that protects your heart points, while breaking your opponent's moves to attack their heart points. As you break all of your opponent's moves, you gain break points, which can be stored up in a battle to swap out a current move in your hand for one in your deck. You can also spend these points to bring cards back into your hand and deck from an analogous discard pile. Losing a heart point also brings all of your cards back, which is a helpful touch as you're generally out of moves to use when it happens. This all functions somewhat similarly to SteamWorld Quest, which I reviewed earlier this year and still totally recommend. If you find these kinds of games interesting, I recommend watching that video. What Little Town Hero has that game doesn't, though, is a board game mechanic. After each turn, you roll a roulette from 1 to 4 to determine how many spaces you can move in a different direction. Certain spaces on the board have environmental gimmicks that require certain moves to use for useful effects, or they have citizens of the town who have special moves and enemy debuffs you can freely use if you land on their space. Sometimes the tile even has both, and certain moves of yours can let you move freely around the board, so when luck is in your favor, you can strategize superbly satisfying combos that are easily this game's best moments. That luck, however, will make or break Little Town Hero for you, and is where the game has fallen apart for me personally. See, I compared this game to a deck building game, but the truth is, You have about 15 to 20 moves in the game. Landing on certain tiles in a fight will add a move to your inventory for the duration of the fight, but at best you have a small pool that you can't customize. Like I mentioned earlier, these moves are randomly distributed to you at the beginning of encounters, so you have to make do with what you got. Much like an actual card game, sometimes you get a bad hand and just find yourself in a war of attrition, hoping for any way to make a dent against the game's monster battles. These monsters are much more adept than you, and it can feel like an uphill battle trying to counter their numerous powerful moves that have special effects that all work against you. Not helping this issue is that this game has a pace comparable to that of Molasses, with monster fights lasting 20 minutes at best and sometimes over 40 minutes at worst. I've had a few fights where I managed to last for about half an hour and then was defeated, meaning I had to start all over, which is increasingly frustrating as the game wears on. You're handed some tools to try to combat this, namely a skill tree that expands throughout the game and lets you add more strength and effects to your moves, but that element of a chance in fights holds it all back so much. Even just being able to choose my starting moves in a fight would be great, but some monsters are still so capable with advantageous movesets that it feels like you need to rely on luck and landing on the correct board space to eventually win. When it all works in your favor, it's great, but when it doesn't, it's frustrating, leaving me feeling dispirited enough to want to give the game a break more than a few times. To me, the better implementation of this game's battle system came through the game's rival human fights, which felt much more fair even if they lacked the board game element, and the best implementation were specific encounters where you try to calm animals down like sheep or household pets. These animal battles are set up much more like a puzzle, with you being given a predetermined hand as you try to figure out the exact way to break all of your opponent's attacks. These battles were a great break and have helped keep me going as I've played the game. Otherwise though, I've felt so conflicted. I've enjoyed exploring this weird little location, I've had a good enough time following these characters through their simple, trite story beats, and when luck favored me, the battle system shined and allowed for very rewarding strategic play. But when it hasn't favored me, it's left me very frustrated and wishing the mechanics were a bit more rigid. This makes Little Town Hero difficult to recommend. And I really hate that, because I really feel this title was close to being one of Game Freak's best original titles, but it just misses the mark thanks to its glacial pace being adorned with such a subjective amount of luck. If you are very patient and are looking for a unique battle system to delve into and tinker with, I think you'll find something neat to try to come to grips with in this game. But if you get frustrated at getting punished in games from factors outside of your control, you might want to wait for a sale or pass entirely on this one, as I again point you to SteamWorld Quest. I'd like to thank the game's publisher Rainy Frog for allowing me to have a review copy of this game, so I can have this video out on day one, and you for watching. But of course, the biggest thanks to my Patreon peeps for their support.